Yes, I was. Salam alaikum.
Well,
I was asked to introduce myself. Do you still require me to, or not?
Oh, please do.
I'm-
Most welcome.
I was born and brought up near here, and became
Born here as well.
very near here. I was
Yes.
born actually in Kingston on Thames, but
Oh,
brought
that's
up
right.
in Wimbledon,
Yes.
and became a broad-minded Christian, and worshipping around the world as a professional soldier for 34 years until I retired 5 years ago.
Is that right?
Gave me an insight into other faiths and their approaches, and since then I've administered a charity, the National Association of Flower Arrangement Societies. But I'd like to raise perhaps a philosophical issue, and that is that the revelations, God's revelations, have always been in times of confrontation and great stress. For example, Moses and the people being removed from Egypt, Jesus with the domination of the Roman Empire and so on, and Muhammad in the 6th, 7th century, times of great stress and confrontation, and that's continued with confrontation between those three theistic faiths. Yet we live in a multiracial, multi-faith, multicultural world, multi-faith England, South London, and to focus on the here and now, what should we be doing to ensure that we do live in a state of Islam, of peace, which all the major faiths would promote, but in fact have woefully proved to be inadequate, certainly in Bosnia and elsewhere. What should we be doing here and now?
It's a very big question, in fact, covering the whole history of religion and its inception and the interrelationship between religions and so on and so forth, and also applied to the present-day contemporary problems, right? But the answer, I think, shouldn't be very complicated. It's quite simple. Number one, you should remember that if there is one God, as we all believe, the three religions we refer to, then their teachings of the same God could not have been contradictory. It's impossible. So if we find any fundamental contradiction in the teachings of Judaism, Christianity and Islam, then either of the two inferences have to be drawn. Either there is no God, or we have failed to understand the meaning of those so-called contradictory teachings. The Holy Quran has specifically spoken on this subject. It says that there is no contradiction in God, and there is no contradiction in religions either. And it says that right from the point when Adam brought the first law to man, up to the point when the Holy Quran was revealed, all prophets have been basically presenting the same teaching, which as its fundamental features has these things as mentioned in the Quran. Number one, submission to the will of Allah, to purify worship to Him alone. Here purifies means that although people worship to Him, but there are other involvements and unfortunate elements which pollute that worship, and do not leave it as a single directional worship to God. Ulterior motives and personal loves and preferences and things, they all pollute the atmosphere of the worship. So the Holy Quran specifically says pure, dedicated, undiluted worship to God. That has been the teaching of all religions. And spending in the cause of goodness as prescribed by religions, for the sake of mankind and for the sake of the values, good values of religion, etc. These are the fundamental teachings according to the Quran, which right from the word go, as religions were born, continue to remain in all the following teachings or laws brought by religions. Now, the contradictions. According to the Holy Quran, the contradictions are all man-made. People fail to understand certain teachings and created differences which could not be compromised, which could not be reconciled with the teachings of some other religions. They're all wrong. The Holy Quran speaks of an evolutionary process of corruption. It should be called, in fact, it's the other way around than evolution. Devolutionary process may be, but destructive process, deteriorating process of man's views on religion, God, and to himself, in relation to his own fellow beings. The Holy Quran says that all religions who began with the unity of God, ultimately got disintegrated into polytheism of some sort. And man-made gods began to take shape and occupy the seats along with God. And it's a very interesting treatment of the whole process by the Quran, and very intriguing in a special way. It says that the same psychological factor which is responsible for the rejection of truth at the outset is responsible for the elevation of the same people rejected earlier to status higher than man. For instance, Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. When he came, he was rejected on the plea by the Jews that you are less than a man. You are not a legitimate member of human society. You are born illegitimately. And yet you claim to be more than a man, as if you are a prophet of God. And your end is as cursed as your beginning is. How can you claim to be above us, superior to us? The basic issue of rejection is acceptance of a superior being among yourselves born within you, who speaks on the authority of God and to whom you must submit. Human society, which already has rebelled against the religious values, and that is why it becomes corrupt, is in no mood to accept another yoke in the name of God. So it rejects. But once, by Allah's decree, people begin to submit to this messenger of God, whom they considered before that inferior and not worthy of even being counted among the human society, once they accept him, then again the same psychological problem of submitting to a man assists them in building an apology for themselves. We believe in this man because he is more than a man. He is not an ordinary person. So they shut the path of the future human appearances by obstructing these passages, obstructing these the passage of human divine representatives, by believing that the previous one to whom we submitted was more than a man. He showed such miracles as no man can show, and he brought such evidence with him as is not possible for ordinary human beings to bring. So whether they call him as God or demigod or not, practically they build barriers between them and the future appearance of a divine messenger. So the same has been done to Hazrat Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. They say he came with these miracles and those miracles, and no man on earth who would ever be chosen to represent God again could repeat those miracles which have been, in fact, the creation of misunderstanding human beings. They do not concoct these things all together, but these miracles, as understood today, were born out of the human misunderstandings of certain facts. So this is, in a nutshell, the Quranic treatment of the issue of similarity, unifying factors, and divergences and differences between the major religions.